So Cute lost his consciousness, but will come soon after. He was hit with a powerful blow and still feels pain in his left arm. He wonders if it was ripped out, but it looks over to see. And it's only been deeply cut. It's useless for the time being, but Vikir is actually pleasantly surprised. Even though the surplus is wounded, to only have deeper cuts after being struck by an 8+ risk monster is unheard of. Is this the true power of the stick server? The Kia has a newfound vigor and dodges the charge from the beast. Just because he got lucky once doesn't mean he can withstand another hit. It's going to be a hard battle, but an experienced hunter must find a way to win. The best thing you can do now is run away. As Vikir is running, he thanks the barbarian tribe for ballooning this beast. If not, he might have been dead already. He sees a fence and knows it just past that is this campsite where he prepared all of his traps. Can you say evade this beast for a little longer? And he's pacing desperately looking for a spot. The serverless was inches away from having a meal, but Vikir spots is 10 and is running towards it. At the very last second, he jumps into the air right before the monster can close its jaws. It steps into one of his traps and Vikir lands on his back, but welcomes his foe to his version of the Cradle of Swords. Vikir regained his composure and is shocked to see that his traps are actually working on his service, and he is quite happy. At least the strong monster is the same species as the one he prepared for. He coated the blades with the bloody beams, and it should be slowly draining the monster's life away. As we see it cough up blood, even so Vikuna knows won't die that fast. So he prepares a poisoned spear and hurls it into one of the monster's heads, and it begins to count. There are service rises from the trap, and when Vikir counts to 7, the Surdrs falls over. Dead, but curious, happy that the rumor is true. He laced the spear with the bloody mama's venom, and it's said that no living creature can walk more than 7 steps after being bit. All of the XP from the monster rushes into Vikir, but he wonders how he will carry this back. The cause of death is obvious, so maybe the Guardian Knight will vouch for him since he saw him prepare all the tools. But there's something else for care. Must do. Services are usually gatekeepers that protects territories, and it must have been guarded gun nearby dungeon. Dungeons are mysterious places that harbor treasure, and some powerful monsters use them as a lair. Since the gatekeeper has dealt with the gear, can go and reap the rewards. He begins covering himself with the monster's feces, and he does this to discourage any smaller monsters from bothering him. He starts backtracking the beast his trail, and shortly after he finds the dungeon. He remembers this place in his past life, and it was only discovered years later, but when it was already empty. Right now, however, it's not the case, and he can sense man underneath the Reddit surface. It hasn't been cleared yet. Vicky, I can't see any light, and wonders how deep this actually goes, but smiles in excitement to see on what treasures await him. The curious traversing through the cave and sees the veins of ruby lighting his path. He notes that it must be connected to the Red Owl Mountain. All of a sudden, he sees that ominous room where the red light, and a pedestal holding a large ruby. Mana is emanating from it, and he also notices a skeleton right beside him, letting him know that someone tried this before him. The Q inspects the dead man and reads a letter beside him. It made in the letter calls himself a Cain, and Vikir notes that the handwriting is Baskerville and continues to read. It made in the letter is writing, so future generations do not make the same mistake that he did. The stone chamber has been talked about as a legend for years, and Cain, alongside what is a brother, stumbled upon this dungeon. They killed many monsters and completed many trials, and it took them 3 years to get to this room. The Kita is intrigued that this stone must be very valuable. He looks at it, and there's instructions. When entering, it's 1, but once inside, it's 2. When leaving, it's 1. Kanan, his brother, contemplated over this ominous text for a long time, but came to a conclusion. They were twins and came out of their mother's womb, but after birth, they became 2. However, the text wrote that they must become 1 again, and that meant that only one of them could leave with the treasure. After the fierce encounter, Cain killed his own brother, but despite all this struggle, there was still no change. The pain from killing his brother for nothing caused him to go mad, and after days of regret, he decided to leave. But let this letter as a warning. Nothing of value can be gained in this duffel stand. It only serves to tempt humans. Vikir understands the story, but he doesn't have a twin, and the assignment is still the same. It must be the 2 brothers misinterpreted the texts. Vikir has to think no dungeon is unbeatable. He looks at the skeleton corpse and laughs to himself. Cain and Abel were unlucky since they came down here together. It kept them from seeing the real solution. The dark passage and a contrastingly bright stone chamber. The answer lies in the dungeon. When entering the room, he has 1, but when the ruby's light shines, it casts a shadow as he becomes 2. The key here. breaks the stone with his hands, causing a light to vanish. And now he's become one again. The answer is Shadow. But here smiles as he completed the trial and he sees a relic of this dungeon, of demonic sword. It reads that only those with Baskerville blood will be able to wield Beelzebub. The name sends shiver down Vikir's spine. He never knew this legendary sword originated from down here. It only saw it in picture books from his past life. The gluttonous fly bezel pump that invaded the continent in old legends and was one of the 7 calamities in order to stop these demons. The 7 families stepped up, and the calamity the basketballs fought was Beelzebub. The remnants of this demon was hidden within the land, but as energy is said to have allured monsters. The legend is many years old, so no one believes it, but here Vikir is overlooking the remains of this calamity. The hero does know that that legend was indeed true, and this sword was used by the team in Cleanse to kill thousands of humans. But it won't happen this time. The cure grabs the sword and makes it his dark red aura fills into Victor's arm, causing him to reel in pain. The sword reappears as an extension of the Keto's arm, and he's amazed to receive a blade made from a corpse of a great calamity. Exploring this cave was definitely worth it, and he smiles, wondering what heights his power will reach in this life. The cure is satisfied and moves to leave the cave, but all of a sudden he's overwhelmed and drops to his knees. What is this feeling? That's intense hunger. The bleed from his hand is pulsating, and Vikir wonders if this is how it's asking for something to eat. He manages to walk outside of the cave, but this insatiable hunger is unbearable. He notices a heightened sense of smell and consent, something close by. The bleed extends, pointing the cure to follow, and they go to the corpse of the hellhounds that he killed earlier. The blade extends it to the monster and is absorbing the beast, and Vicky are starting to go back to normal. Beelzebub must have been starving for a long time. The boy wonders of all the dead trees and dry soil in the area. As a result of this thing's hunger, just how much will you have to feed this binge-eating disorder? These are about finishes and retracts into Vikir's hand. Then we get a status screening showing one of the abilities that it has gained. Hemorrhage held. This must be its ability. It is said that can steal the attributes from the prey that it eats, and how much it can absorb is infinite. He reads the skill, and then allows him to cause intense bleeding, even from the smallest of cuts. The kid gets an epiphany, and if he can steal abilities, what about the servers he took down? We shift to that location, and Visa was excitedly trying to devour the monster, but Vikir tells him not to eat it all. He needs some proof that he actually killed it. The care sees the blade, not listening to them, and smacks it on top of the head, telling it to stop. But he gains 2 more abilities, burn injury and high-speed regeneration. The second one confuses him, but he sees his sewer rat crushed under the serverless. So this must be its ability. And hold up, how does a rat have this insane-ass ability? It's what? Whatever. Knowing he's done more than enough. Vic, your high's out until the end of the exam. The evaluation begins and rewards are handed out based on what the young hounds have achieved. Well, one hound stood out since no one could have believed a monster of this caliber was slain. We shipped the Hugo questioning who killed the serverless, and it was informed that it was Vicky, who had accidentally went to the restricted area. Hugo was impressed. Usually, Guardian Knights tend to avoid those kinds of risks, monsters. But Barrymore informed him that it was heavily wounded. Hugo continues to question how Vicky got his hands on a poison strong enough to kill it. Barrymore doesn't know the answer and has nothing else to report, but Hugo is still quite happy. And as resourceful son, knowledge is power and power is your worth. Barrymore shocked. That event would be so powerful, especially not being a direct descendant. But Hugo tells the man that he doesn't discriminate like the previous patriarchs. It only matters if they have skill. It means royal bloods can be dogs and those from the Van family could be elite. Hugo summons Vikir and asks about his achievements. The cuter says he put chocolate on his spear, and he explains the weakness those monsters have, and he could finally understands why he chose chocolate from the food storage. Barrymore has just left and all. This can't be a normal father-son conversation. If you go ask Secure why he didn't give more details about his hunt to Barrymore, but the Cure simply responds that he doesn't need to answer to someone who isn't his master. Hugo asks who this master it is, and Vicky responds that it's only the patriarch. Hugo is impressed, and as a reward, the monster he hunted is granted to him, and one wish that he desires, since he scored the highest in the exam. But your tightens his grip and excitement and asks Hugo to allow him to go to the 10,000 Epistle Library. This library is one of the largest in the entire empire, is located in the heart of the clan. Hugo questions if the boy knows that only top-ranking members of the family are allowed to enter. Pick your things, he'll be shot down, and says he is going to have to find a way to sneak in. But shockingly, Hugo allows it and even encourages him to read the Baskervilles' sixth technique located in the restricted zone. Vikir is perplexed. Is this the same Hugo that he knew letting an illegitimate child to read the sixth technique? He remembers from his past life that those with a van in their name never rose higher than the fourth technique. No need to get too excited though. The sixth level is not something he wants to stop at. In his past life, Hugo mastered all 9 of the techniques, and Vikir hasn't forgotten his quest for veterans. He will attain the greatest book of basketball, one that houses the techniques to subjugate even the 7th-grade calamities, and it will be even sweeter if Hugo is the one who gave it to him. The cure thanks him for his kindness and is short to exceed his expectations but curses him in his mind for his arrogance. The Calapost is a library, and this is the first time that he's ever been there. He starts browsing books, and these are all the ones that he wanted to read so bad in his past life. But they were all locked away in here. No matter how talented a Van was, they were never allowed to learn anything above or the 4th technique. In order to ensure the pure bloodline, Vikir finds the book of the 6th technique and unlocks it, and he never would have also imagined in this life Hugo would allow him to read it so soon. In the past, I learned first through 4th technique inside and out in order to try and grasp the 5th, what he was never able to. Asker, the swordsmanship, depending on its stage, is referred to as a tooth when one draws teeth or red sword energy appears. Vikir skins through the book, but it's still curious on the real reason that he came here. He goes towards the exit, shocking the guards, wondering if he needs anything else. But Vikir says he's finished what he needed to do. He will go read some other books in the time being, going to a section that the guards believe is useless. Vikir leaves them to their thoughts and ventures forth, find his hidden treasure, and after some searching, he finds it. A book titled A Lurking Ambush, a book on the basics of the 1st technique, that pure bloods don't really read it and do this. The pages is considered useless, but Vikir knows its true worth. Before he died, one of his squad mates found a relic in a dungeon close to the mountain. They found a single page inside of this coffin, a page of Baskerville handwriting. Hugo was amazed by it and scoured the whole library to find its match. This book was thought to unlock the 10th technique, and Hugo crazily shifted the family's focus to finding the 6 other pages, and even going as far to declare war on other families. And after the death of many hounds, all the pages were completed, and Hugo broke through the 7th technique, straight to the 9th. But this time, if Vikir won't allow him to pointlessly send his brothers to death, Vikir was one of the ones who recovered all of those pages and memorized each of their contents. But since then, he's never had the original book. He still wasn't able to pass the 4th technique. So 2 other people reading this book, it seems jumbled up and random, but to Vikir, all aligns and makes sense. Once you fill in the blanks, and once it's complete, it turns into a masterpiece. Vikir vows that before he turns 15, he needs to regain the power that he once had before he died, and master the 4th technique. Hours pass and Vikir has had enough, noticing that he focused for almost an entire day, but he's memorized the entire book, but can't feel the presence of the Guardian Knights. Vikir knows that his young body has limits and still wonders if he can achieve the 5th technique. He closes his eyes and within his mind, he stands opposite a blue figure. It only shows the first slash in the figure, and then the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. He reminisces on his old life, and his setbacks made by being mocked by his peers, that being able to conquer this barrier. But he won't let it happen again as a blue figure resembles an old Hugo. The cube unleashes the 5th technique and feels a burning sensation from the stomach. He's so happy at the fact that he's already ahead of his past self and at record-breaking speed. An 8-year-old boy was able to draw the 5th tooth. The cute likes his progress, and as long as he has enough men at the support, he can unleash his new skill. He notices his Amana capacity has went up as well, and he has improved from a sort of expert to low caste graduator. It took him 30 years to reach this point, though his swordsmanship is not quite on par with his old self. Nothing can stop him now from reaching the 10th technique. He's learned 2 new moves, Piercing Fang and Lurking Ambush. But thanks. If he puts his mind to it, he can even face a mid-level graduator and thinks to himself that you would have 100% success rate with an assassination and 50% fighting head-to-head. The only issue now is how much of his strength he wants to show Hugo. He needs to give the man something to look forward to. All the care prepares everything he needs. He proceeds to set fire to the book, erasing it forever, with only heat knowing its true contents. The guards smell fire and ask the cure what's going on, but he pretends that he was sleeping and left his magnifying glass around the book. The guards are relieved that don't think too much about the book, and wasn't glad it was just a useless one. If you ask them if they're busy with the Moor clan regarding the ruby mines, There was no time to be worrying about a small problem like this. The guard's about to keep it a secret since they were supposed to be watching him. And Vikir agrees, and about apologizes again. And he apologizes again. He takes his leave and the two men are happy on what a kind person the young master is turning out to be. But Carrie turns to Hugo and the patriarch asks him what he learned. And if Vikir teases him saying he's learned something sharp, it's soft and viscous. And he felt something like that. This shocks Barrymore and Hugo. And they think there's no way this kid had learned to use aura. Aura is the entryway into the world of the sword. Even geniuses have to train non-stop until the age of 15 to reach this low-class sort of expert level. Hugo calm himself down. And what can this 8-year-old really do? Asking him to show him what he's learned. And Vikir obligates, we shift to the dueling ground. And it seems Hugo unleashed a monster for Luckier to play, with a very hungry one at that. Out of the gate emerges an ORC, a C risk-rated monster. All of the fellow kids are worried about the cure. This has to be too much. They release the chains off of this animal and it roars menacingly and starts charging EFI Cedar. He stands there calmly, and with one stroke of his sword removes one of the orc's arms. Everyone, including the ORC, is shocked, and quickly you pick your lunches down to remove one of his feet as well. If the cure notes that the AORC must be in shock due to bleeding this much, his B-class skill hemorrhage negates the orc's past every generation ability. All of the surrounding children can't believe how strong Procure it is, but he knows that this isn't enough to please his father. So he'll show him a taste of what he really learned, and coats his sword in Nora. Barrymore and Hugo, or taking it back. Seeing the young master use Aura Blade of a Cure uses his new power to finish off the work, making Hugo almost jump from his seat. Barrymore is convinced that the Cure is at least a low-class sword expert and is astonished that the bloodline has produced such prodigy. But Hugo begins questioning why the Orca is bleeding so much despite its regeneration. Hugo just says that Orca is weak, and Barrymore wonders why this man can't show his happiness. Vikir interrupts, asking if they have anything stronger than a work. Hugo smiles and is happy with his son's appetite. He tells Barrymore to release the barbarian they captured not too long ago. This medicine creature hasn't been fed in some type and they bring it out. Even Vikir is surprised to see a troll. Vikir asks his father if he can start right away, and Hugo allows it. The boy dashes in, and the troll tries to punch him, but he misses his small frame. His defenses are tough. This fight won't be easy. The boys around don't understand what the Kia is doing, but Hugo does. Troll's regeneration is much stronger than orcs. If you cannot deal a lethal blow, it might be wise not to strike at all. The crowd sees Vikir barely dodging each strike, and it seems this is an act that he's putting on. He's hiding his real strength, and he could easily slay this beast, but doing so would make his strength suspicious. A good method in this situation would be to use the troll's strength against it. If your dashes and then slice the monster along the neck, and the troll falls on both knees and tries to stop the bleeding. The crowd starts to believe that this was too much for Vikir, and the troll's wound regenerates. But Q doesn't want to use this hemorrhage ability, and Hugo says Vic here doesn't have to continue, but the boy is still determined to kill the troll. He continues his act, saying that he'll reach even greater heights if he fights just a little longer. Make your coats, a sword, an aura, and his entire goal for this fight is to make it seem like he enlightened himself to the next stage. In the middle of an intense fight, he prepares a second technique and is excited to see Hugo's reaction. He draws a second fang and destroys the troll, and all the onlookers are completely taken aback. History was written. The record holder for the fastest mastery of the second fang was 18 years old, but Hugo just witnessed an 8-year-old boy doing it in front of his very eyes. Make your shakes, his head pretending to be surprised, but Hugo has sweat dripping down his face. Just how strong is this boy? 1 week passes and Vikir is seen in the mess halls, still not enjoying the slop that they serve. All the other hounds are now avoiding him due to sheer strength, but Vikir just chuckles. It was fun to see Hugo all flustered. The strength of Acute revealed was a medium-ranked sword expert who has reached the second technique, but in reality he's a low-ranked graduator who has reached the 5th, and after absorbing the troll, he's probably even stronger than a normal graduator. The cure, however, noticed that ever since this parasite attached to his arm, his appetite has almost been insatiable. All of a sudden, the triplets approach for here, but he doesn't seem to be pleased. But he's shocked to hear the boys actually praise him for his achievements, the cure, into the wonders, if they're trying to trick them, and vows to punish them later. But I just think he has trust issues. Barrymore sneaks behind them and informs him that he needs to visit Hugo. We see Hugo meeting the Moore clan head agent Adolf Moore. They're discussing the joint training and the two clans. They're discussing the joint training that the two clans participate in every year. But again, into a disagreement. Since last time there were several injuries, the two men's aura flare up and they're natural rivals. The basketballs are natural rivals of the Moor clan since the Moor clan is made up of magicians to the basketball swordsman. These two were always neck and neck. However, the old emperor once said that the two skills were complementary unless such the two houses proceeded with the joint training. Only children between 8 and 15 usually attended, and it was held in good faith. But ever since this dispute with the Ruby Mine, it's gotten more intense. But due to the emperor's orders, the training must continue. Adolf isn't the head, but rather his agent, and asks about the young prodigy that one might not see in 100 years. His duo? Hugo smiles, saying that Vikir isn't that big of a deal, leaving the man disappointed on how his father acts when he just complimented his child. Adolf continues that the Moor clan also has a genius, a child named Kalmus, and tells her to come in. We see this young red-haired girl, and Adolf asks her to greet Hugo. But instead, she immediately accuses him of stealing the ruby mine and asks for it back. Adolf scrambles and tries to calm the situation, but Chemist just snitches on all the stupid shit he was saying on the way here, even saying Hugo has a pathetic beard. That's too far. This takes Hugo off, and Adolf quickly apologizes, but Chemist doesn't relate the mending that Hugo returned the mine immediately. If Hugo has had enough, and his aura flares up, telling the girl to stop. It seems the Moor clan doesn't teach manners to their children. All of a sudden, someone is heard coming into the room, and Vikir confidently strolls in, saying these pesky Morgs don't know when to quit, trying to take something that isn't theirs. Adolf notices his presence, but quickly turns to see Chemist is not by his side, and she's already standing face to face with the Vikir. Canvas, this name rings a bell. This is the Moor clan's steel-blooded empress, but as a child, even among arts majors or power, it was on another level. During her prime, she subjugated all the demons in the mountains by herself, and the technique in which she did gave her even more fame. Not to mention, she was also a beauty that manipulated politicians. However, this story is not for many years, and for now, she's just a rude 8-year-old. Pick your humbles, like your humbles are telling her that she worked so hard getting all the way here. But just to throw a tantrum, Chemist gets mad and asks him to say it again, which he does, and she charges up an ice spell. She's going to explain it in a way that the Cure's dog shit brain can understand. And that's her words, not mine. She creates a replica of the ruby mine and surrounding area. And this impresses for Cure, cause he thought he was about to have to fight her or something. She points towards the Louis mine, explaining that its contents and where it's located between both territories. The problem is the entrance starts within Morg, but it travels well into Baskerville territory. But since the entrance is still in Morgan territory, Chemist believes it should belong to them. She says that these foolish basketballs just trespass and ignore their request to pay a lease to share the land. Adolf is impressed by his prodigy, but Vikir begins to speak. He asks if the rubies are used as a magical ingredient, and basketballs don't really have a use for it, but leasing the territory. No, and then the basketball family is stupid enough to lease that mine for chump change. Chemist protests that he just said they don't need to rupees, but if Akira argues that it's not about that, it's about the territory. Chemist gets mad and tries to give an example, and extends her arm past more territory, asking who this arm belongs to now. But Kira grabs it, saying that now it's his, taking her off guard, and she blushes. She asks what this idiot means, but he clarifies what he's really saying. He grabs his dagger, is that her arm is mine, causing even Hugo to be alarmed to what his son is about to do.
And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a second part, comment below with the word part 2. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.